electing me President Ancient India section of 79th session being hosted by Barkatullah University, Bhopal. I think that this honor bestowed upon me by my colleagues and friends is an expression of their love and affection towards me and as a recognition of my humble contribution to ancient Indian history in general and economic history in particular. I take this opportunity to share my views on historical investigation into price, market and money in early India. With this August gathering of this scholar, the attention this aspect of economic history was to receive has not been proportionate to its significance. Maximum space is devoted to the study of trade, taxes, corporate activities, only a few pages to the study of this problem by a few scholars. So in order to lessen this gap, attempt has been made to study the problem in historical perspective. Historians must necessarily exercise caution before relying upon economic interpretation and inferences. It is imperative to examine the definition given by the economists to a particular term or phenomena. The very object of methodology of economics vis-a-vis the history spells out the need for an extra careful use of historical tools while utilizing it for the need for the purpose of historical investigation. Although we do not find some references to ancient texts, but those are hardly sufficient as they are quoted to investigate or support their thesis about the present without conducting a chronological inquiry. Similarly, economic models are meant to picture the contemporary society and therefore they may not necessarily be a good choice for their ancestors. A lot of change has given into economic and cautiously social matrix and as such any inference regarding the present must cautiously utilize to probe into the past. Whether it is practices valuation of costly or ordinary commodities for royal or commerce use, the development of various other factors such as political social power, expansion of their domain, as well as their ability to influence other forces have discounted the cultural, religious and ritual aspects. But the picture was not always the same. Those factors like political power and economy were there in the past too. The study of the society and economy, whether ancient, medieval or modern, requires a holistic approach, especially for conducting historical investigation or when done in historical perspective. No single factor can ever be attributed with the changes that take place. There are always many of them. It is merely a question of dominance of few over the others that dictates the course of phenomena. With the passage of time, these forces change position or at times an entirely new situation bring to the fore a new factor which dominates all others. This entirely depends on the particularity of its existing circumstances. A critical study of such forces in historical investigation is imperative, and for such purposes, economical and social models based upon the study of the present must be suitably modified. It is all used and utilized with extreme care and caution. The Law Digest mentions even ways of acquiring property in accordance with the law: inheriting, finding, buying, conquering, investigating, working and accepting them from good people. There were 10 ways of making a living. They were imparting knowledge, handicrafts, working of wages, service, tending livestock, marketing, farming being supported, begging for alms, lending money, etc. All the above were sources of revenue. Thus these were income of the state as well. Tax was the source to replenish the treasury. Taxation is the basic mode of accruing money and collection of revenue. Tax and custom accruing on trade and commerce and customs necessitated the fixation of price. According to Kautilya, price shares, surcharge, monopoly, tax, fixed tax, manufacturing, change and penalty constitute heads of the income of the state. Most of the above heads of the income were closely related to the fixation of price and taxes. Price and taxation were inextricably interwoven with one another. Fixation of price was possible only in two ways: by means of any commodity or item of exchange of commodity accepted value, or metallic pieces of commonly accepted value. Thus, the fixation of price required in medium of exchange, whether in cash or coin. It was required to ascertain the ratio between the sellable goods and value of the currency to make the transaction possible. Now, barter system, I stated, you all know, after barter there was invention of money, and money took place as medium of exchange. But I would like the gradual extension of barter, the growing measure of exchange, transaction, and increasing varieties of commodities barter led, therefore, to further development of commodity exchange value, stimulating the formulation of money and consequently have a disintegrating effect on direct barter. This spontaneous form of exchange signifies the bringing of the transaction commodities into money. About barter, certain references, literary and archaeological, have been given, which is quoted here. Prices were the essential mechanism of markets, the medium through which market forces revealed themselves and exercised their effects by reaching the prices, just prices, judicious prices, sometimes called as divinely ordained price. It is also linked divinely ordained price with the structure of society by defending of just price as that which would yield the manufacturers or producers and sellers sufficient income to maintain them in their respective social ranks. This is also described in the Bhagavad Gita, that engage yourself in performing the duties assigned and act accordingly. Don't run after result. Commenting on a verse of Manu, Medhatithi advised the king to collect just tax. A similar suggestion was made by Somdev in his Niti Vakyamritam, that righteous taxation served the king like a Kamathini. All increase of prices when demand was high or the supply were short, and all speculative exploitation of price changes were deemed unjust. Eventually, the prices of commodities which exchange hands exhibited true market price determined by supply and demand is not open to much doubt. Then here comes to the role of the state to enforce the laws of market regulation. Price fixation is undoubtedly connected with taxation, as the sales tax is always fixed either on the price of merchandise or on the profit of sold items. What was the meaning of price or cost in ancient times? According to Panini, the capital invested was mulya, price, and the profit earned on it vasna. Commenting on the verse of Amar Kosh, Sri Swami states that Arga is selling price and mulya is cost price of commodity less than that of the sale price, that is Arga. Regarding the fixation of price of commodities, we have references right from the later Vedic to early medieval times. The Arthashastra, Manusmriti, Yajavalkya, Narad, Vrihaspati, etc. And their commentaries on them, minor Smriti, Dharmavandas, and texts of Niti throw a welcome light on the purchase and sale of the commodities, market regulation, state activities, etc. In this connection, Manu states that the price of sellable commodities should be arrived at by men having expertise of custom house, collection posts, and expertise in estimating the value of all sorts of merchandise, taking into consideration the purpose of the purchase price, cost or mulya, the sale price, arga, the expenses for food and supply, security measures and distance and journey, etc. Since the states had to levy and realize the trade tax, therefore, the burden of taxation of price fell also lied on the king. Regarding the expertise of collection officers, while estimating the price of vendable articles, he should have knowledge about the place the traders left, the place where they arrived, the length and time of storage, and profit and loss as well. Kautilya also speaks of similar principles for fixation of price. He states that Director of Trade are officials concerned should be conversant with the differences in prices of commodities of high value and low value, and the popularity and unpopularity, that demand of goods various kinds, whether produced in the land or in the water, whether they have arrived along the land routes or water routes. He should also know about the suitable times for restoring or dispersal of or concentration purchase or sale. He should further formulate a rule that in case of commodities distant in place and time, however, the expert in fixing price should fix the price after calculating the investment, cost of production, production of goods, duty, rent, and other expenses. This practice is continued at least up to the first phase of the early medieval times. The sale of goods should be made by weighing or by measuring and by counting. At another place, Kautilya states that 1/60th part of the surcharge in the measure of capacity, 1/20th part in measure by weighing, 1/11th part of commodity sold by counting in one's territory. In case of foreign territory, the officer of the collection post attached to the marketplace should ascertain the price and the value of the commodity taken out and commodity to brought in exchange, and should calculate the profit after clearing the places for duty, roadstead, escort charges, picket and ferry dues, food and fodders, and share. On the water routes, tax collector should ascertain here for boats, provisions of journey, price of amount, his goods and the goods in exchange, seasons and suited for voyages, precautions against the dangers and regulations at ports. Along river route, he should ascertain trade from the port regulations and should proceed to whether there is profit and avoid absence of profit. The similar mechanism of trade procedure is described in the Shastilak Champu of the Somdev. Before the transaction of commodity in a market town, it is clearly stated that in the text that the merchandise should be allowed to enter into market for the sale and purchase after paying tax, shulk, bhatak, fare, and due charge, due share, bhag. Kautilya, Yajavalk, and his commentators have also have allowed a profit of 5% over and above the all expenses incurred on the indigenous merchandise, thus a profit of 10% on foreign merchandise. Kautilya has used the term anugyat krayadupari, that is allowed purchase price on which the profit was allowed. Yajavalk prescribes the selling price should be fixed after adding profit to the total investment. Vijyaneshwar, a commentator of Yajavalk, formulates that on foreign merchandise a profit of 10% of the total expense and 5% on indigenous articles should be given. Since Manu and his commentators are silent about the addition of percentage of profit on indigenous commodities, so the rule regarding the foreign commodities should be made applicable for evaluating the prices of indigenous and foreign goods in the time of Manu also. Though Manu suggests several aspects to be taken into consideration while estimating the prices of commodities, yet he does not mention the rule for fixing prices as clearly as Kautilya and Yajavalk. As Manu was posterior to Kautilya and anterior to Yajavalk, so the rules given by them will be applicable for the period of Manu also. In case we accept the rendering of the relevant verse of the Manu Smriti by D.N. Jha and Deret, the indigenous traders would have left with no margin of profit. Instead, they had to suffer the loss on the total money expended on vendable. To the contrary, if they assess the duty on the cost price of commodity, they would have certainly left with some margin of profit. In such a circumstances, it seems that the basis of evaluation of profit was cost price, not the sale price. It is further stated that the Maskari and Hardat, the commentator of the Gautam Dharma Sutra, who flourished in South India in the 11th century AD, that the prices of vendable were estimated at the cost. This fairly has been practiced in India, in the South India, in the first phase of early medieval India, But in some regions of South India, this practice appears to have been continued even in the 11th and 12th century. Nothing can be said with precision about the percentage of profit of traders during the Gupta and post-Gupta period. Narad, Brihaspati, Vishnu, Parasar and others had a few lardages, not to speak explicitly about the price of total expenditure to which profit should be added. In essence of clear-cut rules, one has to take other factors, trends and tendencies of trade commerce of the period to estimate the sale price, so the buyers and purchasers of both should not suffer. Commenting on verse of Manu Medhatithi, he ordained that while calculating the selling price of the king, ought to take into account all the relevant factors such as whence the marketable goods comes, whether it went, how long they have been kept, the profitable profit and probable outlay, what consumed by the man implied by the merchant for securing the goods against the robbers and the forest tribes. But Vijnaneshwar laid down that explicitly a specific mechanism of price fixation. According to him, for estimating the sale value of foreign commodities, a profit of 10% be added to the total money spent on the cost price and incidental expenditure. But he is also silent about the indigenous merchandise. This rule was applicable, probably followed in respect of indigenous merchandise by adding 5% profit. Had the tax assessed on selling price, our traders would have left with no margin of profit except loss. Therefore no trade was possible in the loss of expenditure incurred on. Thus, we may presume that the basis of assessment of dues or tax may have been the cost price of merchandise in early phase of early medieval India. There was some extent arbitrary assessment of prices. Commenting on verse of Manu Medhatithi, states there is certain chief tradesman paying off the royal dues, verbally fixed by the king himself declared, we are living by this trade, and this is our due, be our profit less or more. The way in which it was put up by the lawgiver clearly shows that the traders were often subjected to arbitrary imposition in the first phase of the early medieval period. This may be taken to denote the decreasing volume of the trade and commerce also. So far the gain of merchants is concerned, it can be said that this policy appears to be the outcome of discrepancy that had crept into the policy of assessment on the cost price. Owing to growing feudal tendencies, for the first time it was noticed by Vishwarupa, the commentator of Yajnavalkya. Viewed in this same context, he might have formulated in a new rule that duty should be realized on sold articles, Vikritanam, from vendors and buyers both, which manifested its complete form in the commentaries of Govindaraj and Kulluka Bhatta on Manu. This practice had acquired a prevalence in the South Indian probably earlier than 12th century. Chandeshwar of Mithila, commenting on a verse of the Vishnu states that dues should be levied on profit earned by merchants after payment of all dues on sold goods. The traces of the practice of assessing duty on profit may be found a few centuries earlier had gained momentum in the 11th century and onwards. Prices at which commodities change hands where true market prices determine supply demand is not open to doubt. Every useful items may be looked from 2 points of view of quantity and quality. The utility of a thing gives it the use value or exchange value of a commodity is always determined by its use value. For instance, artisans through his labor and skill increase the value of an article. Exchange value of use value minus cost value of original commodities may be regarded as enhanced value of certain of articles like gold, silver, copper, precious stones, ivory, cloths, etc. So here is keeping this portion, the address in your hand, you may go through. The commodities, wheat, silk, ivory, gold, etc., precious gems, etc., may be of use value. It is exchanged for other commodities are money but as a commodity, it is simultaneously not a use value if it is used for its owner or producer. That is direct means for satisfaction of utility of his own needs. Animals like cow, horses, elephants are both exchange value for owner to get money and use value for purchaser for using as a cavalry in warfare or for riding. Mathematical texts like Ganitsar, Leelavati and some document texts on document Lok Prakash and Lok Padhati have the evidences from these have been multiplied. During drought or excess rainfall may be responsible for the insufficient production of crops and so the prices may rise. So I have given all sorts of evidences and from Jatakas up to the 12th century. Numerous prophecies relating to drought and flood and scarcity in the chapters dealing with the planetary movements of Buddha, Brihaspati and Shukra have been mentioned in the Vyas Sangita also, in other archaeological texts also. All sorts of on this page whatever is given is shows that there was drought or flood which creates scarcity. Frequent feudal wars, the second point which influenced the price index, it is frequent feudal wars and foreign invasions undoubtedly accounted by for a real scarcity of goods and food. The Rashtropoplav, topsy-turvy, political condition, invasion and plundering by Arabs, Ghaznavids, Gorians were the cause of economic decline in India. An excessive demand for war indemnity may have led to the indigenous rulers to indulge in excessive imposition of taxes. To meet such demands of conquerors, defeated chief begins to issue debased usual coins of much less content of pure metals. Indo-Sasanian and Gadaya coins were the outcome of such raids and wars. In this connection, a few lines after, in this connection, our ancient lawgiver like Manu and his most celebrated commentator Medhatithi formulated the rules for protection of merchants from robbers and princes. Commenting on a verse of Manu, Medhatithi stated that while estimating the value of the commodities, commands that concerned authority should also take into account the protection, yoga chema, of merchants travelling through the forests and different states from kings and princes, Rajbhayam, and robbers and plunderers, Chaurabhayam, which has been taken into imply not only the physical danger but also financial extortions in the early medieval period. This is a typical symptom of feudal trends. In this connection, it is interesting to notice that in order to replenish the depleted treasury, Somdev Suri recommends that the king should confiscate the surplus wealth of merchants, temples, etc. after leaving for meeting necessary expenses. In view of such recommendations, the wicked and tyrannical king may have adopted all sorts of illegal devices to raise funds and steal the property of merchants on account of their greed. The combined evidence of Raj Sangani, the Vallal Charit, Aparajit Vriksha, speaks of kings resorting to questionable ways of financial extortions of trading community. Next slide. However, we have seen references in sharp contrast to the phenomenon. Somdev Suri at another place observes that the protection of people indeed was a supreme obligation of the ruler. Here he is not a king, as he is not a king who fails in his duty of protection. In the Kashika of Vaman Jayaditya, the commentary on the Astadhyayi of Panini and the Shaktayan Vyakarana of Shaktayan, who flourished in the time of the Rashtra King Amok I, similar view expressed that a king enjoyed the fruit of taxes for protecting all, even merchants, and Luruni too gives likewise information in this connection. In this context, Prabandha Kosh of Rajashekhar, Yamayul Hikayat of Muhammad Ufi refer to journeys made safe for Karwan, etc. And few lines after, it is interesting to note that most of references to cheap financial extortion of merchants belonging to the first phase of early medieval period and the and to their protection to the second phase, denoting decrease and increase in trade commerce condition as well in respective periods. Therefore, the prices should be fixed in such a way that there may be no loss of expenses incurred on sellable goods to traders. The money served as a measure of value of goods. Value is expressed price. Money not in gold, in silver, although they are used as money commodity. Only the money metal given a shape of coin is the measure of value. The prices were estimated in metric money is compared to that of exchange in bullion. As money takes the shape of coin, it springs from its formation as a circulating medium. The prices of money in names of commodities must confront those commodities within the circulation in the shape of coin, of pieces of gold or silver of a given denomination. Coining, like establishment of a standard in the business of the state. The only difference between coin and bullion is one of the authenticated shape, content and weight, and gold coin at any time pass from one form to another. But during their currency they wear away, some more or other less. Their nominal weight and real weight differs. Coin of the same denomination may have become different in the value because they differ in weight and content. Thus the weight of gold fixed upon the standard of prices deviates from the weight that serves as a circulating medium. It is significant that Medakiti, commentator of Manu, has brought up to our notice that the kind of discrepancy between name and substantial weight of the same denomination, the weight standard of copper, ayask, bronze and gold coins are different. In certain regions weight of a coin was 48 masas and other regions 64 masas and in another regions 108 masas. So all these should be regulated by establishing some sort of harmony among them while fixing the price of a commodity. Therefore, prior to the fixation of prices of commodity, this aspect of coinage and currency should also be taken into account. Probably this is the reason that in the same region a coin could fetch 3 cows and 9 sheep, and in other region it amounts to 1 cow and 4 sheep. The medium seems to differ in weight and content. Next para. As money repeats all other forms, wealth one need only to accumulate in order to obtain all other kind wealth. It means hoarding that have some influence on the index, price index. I want to say perhaps the hoardings may have some sort of causal factor for increase in price and the rate of interest in early medieval period. The normal annual rate interest rose to 24 in the percent in the first phase of annually, first phase of early medieval period, than that of 15% per annum in ancient time. The value of silver is very higher in the early medieval period than that of gold compared to the ancient period. All these charts of ratio which has given here, Kushana period, Gupta period, and later I have given in my article State of Coin Money in early medieval India, which is already published in one proceeding of the UPSC Congress. Change in the price. Now the price of land. I am skipping it because where and why the land price was more or less, in which region. In Tanjore region some price was, premium was high, in Arcot region low. Why? Same is the case with the price of paddy. Same is the case with the price of paddy also. Different things are given here, and how many columns, money coins fetched, how many columns, etc. Drought and floods certainly have affected the agriculture produce and created scarcity of grains. Last para. We have come to know about a famine called a flood in Kannauj, which appeared like a caustic thrown in a wound. crops failed and price of a kari of rice rose to 1,000 dinaras. About the horror of famine of flood, we find a description in the Rajatirmini of Kallam during the reign of Avantivarman in Kashmir. The famine stricken land 10,50,000 dinars had become the price of a kari of rice in husk. Here is a question of equilibrium of supply and demand. After building barrage with the stones of water of Bethesda by Suye, the purchase price of a kari of rice came to be 36 dinars. In the time of Hars, the king of Kashmir, the village being submerged by floods in the year 75, a continuous famine, a kari of rice was available for 500 dinars. Thus, on account of scarcity of commodity and that is supply and demand, there was a rise in price. Price about the stones are given, diamond, pearls, etc. I think I keep these pages and you may go through it and find it out. Price of hearts. No doubt animal, hearts and etc. is prominent animal for work purposes, for transportation, etc. So that is why I have mentioned about them. In according to need and utility of these animals, their prices have been fixed. And not only this, height, symbols, color, size, and age, that is derived from the teeth of the animals. And even then, the astrology also played a role that auspicious symbols, signs should be there which is beneficial to the purchaser or his master. Otherwise, the price of the animal was very low, or they were considered of disuse. So I am not studying all this. The war indemnity sometimes was demanded in number of horses according to Keradu of Parmar Someshwar. The feudal chief of Kumarpal demanded 1,790 horses as the war indemnity. Same was the case with the elephant also. Next was elephant price. Elephant 9, he demanded 9 horses, 9 elephants from them. And about the elephants also, we find that its height, its strength, its size, and according to astrologer Varamir and its commentator Utpal Bhatt mentions 4 kinds of elephant. First, Bhadra with well-proportioned body, auspicious signs, and was of 7, 9 and 10 cubits in height and length and girth respectively. And again, second Manda of 6, 8 and 9 cubits height, length and girth. And then Mriga 5, 7 and 8 cubits in height and length. Fourth one was known as Sankirna, unfit for war. Fourth one type of elephant was known as Sankirna. For war purpose, that is why I have already said. So African horse was most highly priced, and the Indra Aravat was imported from there. Sea trade is Manthan is nothing, only all this is sea trade. All these articles what have been described in the religious texts have been brought from foreign countries during the Kushana or roundabout period. So I think so. Price of slaves. I would like to read few lines. Like animals and female slaves were items of slave and purchase from ancient times. This practice of sale of slaves was frequent from the 4th century BC and onward. There were 15 ways of procuring slaves: Nishita Churni, Samraitya Katha, Ganishar Sangra, Myth Prabandha, so and so, Muslim accounts, and inscription references to refer to the sale of slaves. The valuation of slave was made keeping in view their different use for domestic, agriculture and luxury purposes, abilities and qualities, age, sex, complexion, beauty, physical strength, wit, etc. The Ganit Sangram Mahaviracharya throws a revealing light on the condition of South India, mentions that a 10 years old girl fetched 33.33 gold, that is 512 silver, 13 silver coins, as the ratio between gold and silver is 116. A 16-year-old girl's price was 20.83 gold coins. It appears from the above description that girls in question were purchased for personal sexual enjoyment. For 10 years old could be used for a few years more than that 16-year-old, because in South India most of the girls attain puberty just after 10 years of the age due to, that is struggle here is point for a upper impulse also. A 10-year-old girl was considered quite suitable for marriage by Manu, Brihaspati, Parashar, Kulluk, but Lilavatiya Bhaskaracharya furnishes that a female slave of 16-year-old could fetch 32 gold coins, while a woman of 20 years old should fetch only 25 gold coins. Here again, age, beauty, complexion, personal qualities were the most probable factors for determining the price of female slaves. In two documents of Lake Paddhati, the price of female slaves with white complexion, 16 years old, with pleasing and auspicious limbs for multi-purpose use had higher premium, that is 504 Vishal Priya Dhamma, and 60 Parutra Dhamma, as one Parutra Dhamma was equal to 8 silver Dhammas respectively. The price of the 16-year-old woman in the same region was less in 9th-10th century AD than in the second phase of the early medieval period, 11 to 9. It was perhaps due to scarcity of coins in circulation in the first phase may have resulted in an increase in coins in the second phase of early medieval period. Next. The luxury and ostensions, last para, of the feudal chief also led to a growth in demand for beautiful female slaves. In this connection, an inscription of 11th century from Dhar is quite significant. In about 46 lines, in a poetic description, it speaks of the personal charms, manners, dress, makeup of young girls who have been brought for sale from different regions of India, Kannauj, Tak, Gaud, Malwa, and two other regions in inter-regional markets of Dhar. No specific price has been mentioned for them. At one place, only it is stated that no price could be fixed for them in this world. Yehi, Yeho, Mani, in this world, no price could be of these ladies could be fixed. It means they were most valuable. Each of them must have been sold at a high price for performance of the ulugam or personal service to her master. For the sale deed documents regarding the animals, horse, elephants, cows are also collected in the Lok Paddhati. In the sale deed, day, duty, year of the sale with full address of buyers and seller, length and girth, color, teeth, auspicious limbs, with the identification marks of animal sale, price, signature of evidence, punch, mediator, panchakula, elders committee should be recorded, and lastly scribe has also to put his complete address and signature. There were documents related to mortgaging the slaves and animals also. Besides the reasonable of price estimation. What was the reason for estimation of the price? According to Panini, the main motive of a trader is a Kray Vikray or Vanija for profit on the mulya invested by him. From the Vedic period, gain was the motive of trader, and Avdan Shatak and so many texts speaks about it. It is obvious from the legal text, last para, on page 26. It is obvious from the legal text that the works on polity that fixation of prices and assessment taxes were complementary to each other. Therefore, the tax collector should cause that foreign and indigenous commodities both should be sold as to favor the subject, seller and purchaser. He should avoid even a big profit that would be injurious to the buyers and vendors. The assessment of taxes presupposes the fixation of price of vendables. Megapiti, commentator of Manu, explaining the reason valuation of commodity clearly said, in case of few articles such as silk, cloth or saris, it would not be possible to realize the duty without tearing the articles. Hence, valuation would have become a compulsion. It also may be taken to denote even diamond could not be cut, elephant could not be cut. If you want to take into coins, you cannot. So you have to fix the price. It may also be taken to denote the water was in the increase and decreasing significance money and trade as well during the first phase of world. The reason for evaluation was to check the tax evasion, dishonest traders making false statements about their purchase merchandise, variously when passing through the collection posts, marketplaces, commenting on a term, Mithya Parimana, etc. There are so many points, most of you know, are here given, and you may see. For transactions of various kinds of merchandise at different prices, we may now ascertain whether there was any mechanism to control these markets and regulate the prices commodities and provide the security and facility to buyers and sellers both. In this connection, we find references to Arthashastra, in the Arthashastra, early Smritis and their commentaries, other texts too, to have become strong to have some strong information about the markets and distribution. Smuggling, tax evasion, dishonesty about the quality and quantity, their merchandise, fraud regarding the measuring, weight, counting, vendable of our sold articles were not unknown in those days. In this connection, we find to check and curb the tax evasion, heavy fine was imposed. Again, in the last paragraph, the injunction of Manu, Yajnavalkya, Vishnu against the unlawful trading is almost identical. Manu says, he who tries to avoid collection posts by selling at odd hours, at midnight, or falsely enumerating his goods shall be fined 8 times of the amount of the duty. The king should confiscate the whole property of traders who export goods of which king had monopoly. The law of forfeiture thus applied at the entrance of the goods at mandap or mandapika at the center of gate, the entire entry and exit point of the markets. In the Arthashastra and Law Digest and Dharma Nibandhas, I mean Dharma Shastras, all these have been given in detail. King's officials should regulate the trade transaction in the markets, purchasing the deceitful by punishing the deceitful owner of sold commodities by resorting them to their actual owners, lawgivers, Narad, Brihaspati, and so again, that is the point which has been elaborated. There were administrative board how to regulate the market. There were administrative board to administer the municipal activities, especially market ones, right from the Mauryan period. I am not going to detail. Megastenis tells about it. Municipal corporation, history of municipal corporation, or city administration, and then in the inscription of the Kumaragupta first, Damodarpur and other, there are 4 persons, the first Kayas, the first Kulik, प्रथम सातवा प्रथम क्या है उसमें ये सारे हैं these are given here. और again in early medieval period there were the Sreshti, not only Sreshti, Uttar Sabha, Panchamandali, Panchakola, Goshti, they were regulating the markets, municipal area. There were different types of cities or markets also. Jyeshtanagar, Madhyamanagar, Kanishthanagar, Nigam. Nigam is not city. There is definition I have already mentioned in my articles, situating urban centers in early medieval northern India. It was my general presidential address of the UPC Congress. There is a definition, Banik Bahul Vishesho Gram Nigama. Banik Bahul Vishesho Gram Nigama. Residing by traders or merchants, mostly resided by them, is called Banik. That is, has been mentioned as Badigram in the Shilahar inscriptions. Badigram. So then there were different types of markets. You know the stone market and described in the text or the architecture in the Vansa, Aparajit Piksha, Samrangana Sutradhar, etc. Now I would like, since I have come for the first time, these some articles by few scholars. In footnote I have given the name, not in the body. That is why I have deliberately taken one page about it. In the Yashaslam Champu of Siundo Suri, we find a graphic description of foundation of a town market. Peeth Krayar Krayana Nagar. The author has written put Vedan. That was not the chart. Peeth Krayana Nagar. It is stated in the text that Sri Bhuti, the royal priest, founded a marketplace covering an area as far as the lowing of a cow can be heard. Goruta Pramanam. It is stated that in the text that Sri Bhuti, the royal priest, founded a marketplace covering an area as far as the lowing of a cow, Goruta Pramanam. That is a cross, or 2.5 miles, for sale and purchase of merchandise. It was built of a large tent divided into several decorated chambers consisting of platform for staying the carriages carrying merchandise. Here, Bhandavahini, carrying merchandise, and in that text it has been stated it is the Bhandashala, carrying merchandise. Mahabhandavahini, adjacent to the cow sheds, Goshala and sub-cow sheds, Upashalyabhi, provided with water channels, Kulyabhi, obviously for draught animals drinking water, Jala, grass, Yavasi, or fodder, fuel, Indhana, for cooking food for porters and drivers of vehicles, for securing boxes of valuables, Petak, Paksha Saram, by killing and punishing Arambha or mischievous persons. Arambha, mischievous persons. Aram means to punish or to kill, not only to begin. Aram means to kill a person, mischievous person. Here, the meaning should be to kill. For securing one, you have to punish them, securing the market. And mischievous persons, Bandhana. Strong soldiers, Udavatavati, were appointed for these reasons. He made the town secure by constructing rampart, Bapra, gateway, Pratoli, the water reservoir, Prapa, protected by Sutritranam, enclosure wall, Prakar, moat, Parikha, assembly place, Prasabha, market is Bithi, resting place, Veshanam, the place of unleashing boxes or packages of merchandise, that is Putavedana. To unreveal the packages, to open the packages, that what kind of goods they were carrying in the market, to check the fraud all kind of dishonesty and fraud. Vedana means this. Vedana is not a noun, it is a verb. To open the portal, to check defrauding, evasion of taxes, smuggling of the commodity by dishonest merchants, as supplemented into collection, post-print higher tax to the market. And ultimately, having made the marketplace that is free from gamblers, kitawa, cheats, wit, rogue or jester, vidushak, sensuous person, kamachar, and veshyachar, and margavasthanam, and constructing a collection post-printa attached to the marketplace for living hard, enduring, chick, means chick, tax, sulk, fair, bhatak, a share, bhag, for conducting transaction vyavhar, for traders coming from all directions of the country, nana digadeshu pasarma. Thus, the whole gamut of the above mentioned market town explicitly denotes that it was a market town of the second rate and the meeting ground of the traders of distant lands of the country. For knowing about the comparatively big cities market, we have to have a glance of Anahil Ward, the capital of the Chalukyas, of Gujarat, described in the Kumar Pal Charit. According to this text, Anahilpur was 10 crores in circuit, while that town is 1 crores. It is 10 crores in circuit. Within which were many temples and colleges, 84 squares, 84 marketplaces, with a mint for gold and silver. Each class had its separate quarters and had each description of merchandise, elephant, steed, silk, purples, diamond, pearls, etc. There was one marketplace for money changers, and one for perfumes and engines, one for physicians, one for artisans, one quarter for navigators, for gods and for genealogists, etc. The place grounded with the multiple of separate buildings for the armory, for elephants, for horses, for chariots, for public accounts and officers of the state. Each kinds of good had its separate custom house where the duties of the export and import of the state were collected. It was a place of universal commerce. The daily amount of duty was 1 lakh of tanka. City was surrounded by solid bastion rock raised by 30 feet in height. Multi-rate reservoirs about 300 years in diameter, tanks beside the tank, a Bauli, etc. Thus, Anahilpur Patan was far more large in area and range of transaction than that of the market town of Srivibhuti. So was the case with Shakal city described in the Milinda Panno. Therefore, conclusion drawn by a few scholars that market built by priest Srivibhuti represents the big city of the first phase of the early medieval period in India is untenable. Yes. However, it requires further investigation. Again, about the coinage and its use, scarcity and availability, I have already written an article and a few evidences are taken from there. Literary texts, even law digest and other secular texts, foreign accounts, right from the Palian to Muslim writers. So, it shows that in the first phase of the early medieval up to 910, there was scarcity and it had affected the market price also, and later on there was some revival. This is I have given in this section. And some measures, then weights and their ratio. At last, I would like to say, from the data analyzed above, we may be able to conclude that the early lawgivers, their commentators and texts on polity did not clearly state that sales tax to be realized before or after the fixation of sale price of a commodity. Though they cautioned and cautioned the concerned authorities, the prices should be assessed in such a way that there should be no loss to traders and they should be able to earn a just profit. Since Kautilya Manu and their commentators recommend to collect tax after sale of merchandise, there would have been loss of the total investment incurred on the saleable goods. So there was no scope for pursuing trade. As again this sale price was fixed prior to sale of merchandise, the traders would be able to even can earn a marginal profit lower than that of the normative rate. Vishwarupa, the first commentator, I already said. So it was later on thought that it should be taken on from the profit they gained, whatever percentage was levied. That's how the profit. And one commentator, Narayan, already mentioned that it should be taken from the profit, and he said the or should be the levy for fixing the selling price should be taken from the difference of the total expense and profit. So that indicates that later on there was no loss at all, but sometimes we find later in 11th century it was considered that from the profit if we take, for example, suppose the price of a commodity is 100 and all the expenses you have done, it's 20 for provision, for fare, for transporting, etc. 100. The total is 120. And if you give 5% profit on indigenous commodities, then its selling price would be 126. And you reduce 5% as a tax from 126, then the actual amount would be left for the trader is 119.70 paise. Then it is the loss because he has spent 120. So no trader will trade in any time, at any place. So that is why it was considered that after on the cost price, before selling prices, if you realize, then some margin of profit will be there. But if you take on the profit, then there will be more margin for the traders. This is all discussed. Thank you very much all for patient hearing.